news hound that you are?
I kind of got pushed into it because I covered UAW at the news, and John Irwin, our UAW reporter, is now in Canada. So this kind of just fell in my lap, and I've been covering it throughout.
Oh.
So. Actually, my wife and I, on our 5th anniversary on a train ride to Toronto, went through the 28-page indictment. The first one that they went out, and she made sure I didn't miss any FCA 1s or FCA 2s.
It's a hell of an anniversary present.
Yeah.
You know?
Here, honey, read this.
Yeah. Come on, honey, let's take this train. We'll have a nice 4 or 5 hours. We can read this,
and then get your
this document. Yeah.
You call this a vacation?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So is your wife in the business?
No. She works for Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Okay.
She's a data analytics person. She just
so perfect for
law just interests her, so she was happy to just look over them and go from there. But
You say she was happy.
yeah, right.
Yeah. I'm sure
she was okay with
I'm sure the story would be otherwise different. Just guessing.
She wasn't mad about that as much as she was when I submitted 2 articles from our honeymoon.
You got to learn to give it up, Mike.
One on the plane, one when we were there. But
I guess the good news is you're still married. So obviously, your wife is a very.
They were good articles.
Yeah.
She loves you very much. If there's any doubt about that, you now know it.
Let's put on Do Not Disturb.
Okay, I want to thank all of you who have already tuned in live. Thank you for tuning in on Wednesday at noon. We're off our schedule. You know, typically we do this Thursday at 3 p.m., but the crew's headed to NADA this week, and we're not going to be here tomorrow, so we can't do it then. We've got a great show coming up, though. As I don't know if you saw, we've got the Buick TourX, there it is, in the studio. We're going to be talking all about that with Doug Osterhoff, Buick's marketing manager. We've already gotten some questions from the audience asking about Buick and this car in particular. If you would like to get a question in, shoot us an email, send it to viewermail@autoline.tv. We'll even take a phone call probably, and that number is up on the screen, 620-288-6546. And we're going to get going here in just a moment. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion, and by Lear, a global leader in automotive seating and electrical systems.
All right, welcome everybody, including my co-host, Gary Vasilash.
How you doing, John?
I'm doing fantastic.
This is going to be very strange. I'm going to have an extra day in my week because when I leave here, I'll think, well, it's Thursday, tomorrow will be Friday, but it's Wednesday and tomorrow will be Thursday, so very confusing.
Well, you just confused everybody who's not watching this live.
That's
going,
true.
what are you talking about? We're taping the show a day early because we got to go to the NADA convention. And
so this is the Auto Dealers Association, which I am not going to, but you are going to.
I'm going to. I'm going to learn a whole lot about the retail side of the business.
There you go.
Okay, we got to let everybody know we're joined by Mike Wayland from Automotive News. Great having you back on the show,
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, so, and we got a bunch of
Always
things
fun.
to talk about later in the show, including some of your experience trying to buy a car online.
Yeah.
I saw your article on that. I want to get into the details of it. But before we do, we've got to talk to Doug Osterhoff because he's Buick's marketing manager, and he's been kind enough to bring this new Buick Regal TourX station wagon into the studio. Mike, great having you here.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
And, you know, whenever a car company decides it's going to come out with a new model, you got to put a business plan together. You got to justify to the corporation why we need this vehicle, all the money you're going to spend on it. I am so intrigued. Why did you guys settle on a station wagon? I mean, wagons, you know, when I was a boy, they were everywhere. These days, not so much. What led you guys to go after a wagon?
Well, wagons are still very popular, and people that own them are very loyal to that that segment, if you will. But really what we did is we took a look at the mid-car segment and said, hey, it's time to refresh the Regal. And, you know, it's no surprise that these markets are contracting a bit. So there's a lot of movement to crossovers. So we said, you know, what kind of approach can we take going into this market to keep sales momentum, you know, keep good opportunity, bring in new people to Buick. And that's why we kind of introduced the family of Regals, if you will. So not only did we bring the TourX into the portfolio, but we also brought the Sportback version of the Regal and a GS version that is completely redone from a unique powertrain over and above the standard Sportback, a V6 engine now, standard all-wheel drive. So we really looked at it in the context of there's a lot of competition and a lot of pressure on that segment. How do we best compete? And finding these areas of having a wagon in the lineup, or as we like to call it, the ultimate crossover vehicle, because that's really what it is. It gives the vast majority of people that own these type of vehicles want cars. They want to drive cars. They like the driving dynamic of a car. They feel safer, actually. They feel more in control when they drive a car that's lower to the ground because they can avoid things versus just having a lot of sheet metal around them. But first and foremost, they want utility, and they use that space in their vehicles every day. I mean, they're just very active people. So in their day-to-day lives, they have their stuff in the car all the time, and they use the top a lot to haul things, you know, whether it's bikes or surfboards or kayaks or whatever. And they'll have the cross rails on all the time. They're always ready to go. So people need this type of vehicle. They're loyal to it. They buy them over and over. And so if you look at an area where we weren't in the market, we weren't in this, what we have coined white space, and Mike's heard this a lot being on some of our media drives recently, but it's areas of the market that we're not competing in. They're kind of new to us. They give us, you know, some great opportunity, like the Cascada did. It was kind of surprising to see that come out.
The convertible.
The convertible, the
Yeah.
Cascada convertible, and the Encore in the small SUV segment. So this kind of fit right in with that, but it was a way to stay very competitive in that segment. So that's really why we brought it out.
So traditionally, the Regal has been a sedan.
Yes.
And now the Regal is this TourX, which, as John mentions, is a wagon. And then you mentioned the Sportback, which is a 5-door.
Right.
But it's more sedan-like, right? I mean,
Well, yeah. So the Regal's always been a very expressive, driver-oriented vehicle, excellent driving dynamics, that type of thing. And people that own those, it's kind of an expression of themselves. A lot of times people that own these, say, more expressive, fun-to-drive mid-cars, they have a bigger vehicle in their garage, a garage mate, that gives them the ability to haul the family, haul stuff on vacation. But if the owner's just driving around in general during the normal week or on date night, they'll take that car, and they like to have that car because they enjoy driving one, and it says something about them when they pull up or whatever. So, but with everything kind of going on in the mid-car market and kind of this migration, we said to be competitive, why don't we offer like a different benefit to the customer? And if you look at the segment and even some of the other segments around it, entry lux, that type of thing, you see more and more of these 5-door versions coming into the marketplace because we've gotten to the point where we style them, and if you look at them, that's just a beautiful, expressive car, right, that I want to drive. Then you discover, oh, it opens like this. It surprised a lot of people when we showed them pictures, and then we showed them a picture of the back open. So I think once you get over kind of the perception of what, say, a hatchback is in people's minds, and first and foremost, they're shopping it for how the car looks, how it handles, how it drives, the powertrain, that type of thing, this becomes a big surprise, but it's a very positive aspect of the car. There's no drawback to it because it doesn't affect how the car looks, but everybody right away can think of times when they could utilize that. They're just out and didn't intend to stop in at a garage sale or something, and there's something big. They don't have to run home now and get the other vehicle. Mm-hmm. And just hauling stuff from time to time, it's a big advantage. So people that are shopping in that mid-car segment, they may discover this sedan that has a lot of this utility capability, or they may be surprised to see another version of a TourX. And so I would say if you kind of looked at the two buyer groups of a Sportback and a TourX type buyer, they're both very active people, but the vehicle itself, the TourX, kind of enables their lifestyle, and they don't really depend on another vehicle in the garage to do what they like to do. So that doesn't mean there isn't one, but they don't depend on that. And generally, on the other hand, in the more expressive sedan side of things, you probably generally do have another vehicle, and you probably don't have all your recreational stuff in the car all the time and that kind of thing, which when people load up vehicles in this segment, they do. They just have the stuff in there. They're ready to go. Kind of the world is their gym, if you will.
From a business side, too, I thought it was a great move for Buick to do this because there's not much risk. Buick, in the midsize sedan segment for the mass, has been about 2% or less for the Regal in 5 or so more years. And for them to try to enter the white space with the TourX, which actually is a great driving vehicle, and the GS, and then also the hatch, which you can't actually tell. If you were just a regular person who didn't know automotive and you saw the vehicle, you could probably not tell at all it was an actual hatch compared to the traditional sedan until you actually popped it.
Right, because the hood goes down and it just arcs, and it's not the notchy sort of thing that, that people think about when they might think about a hatch.
Exactly. It's like if you want to design a beautiful, you know, dynamic-looking, athletic-looking vehicle, you draw it, and then all of a sudden it just opens this way. So that's...
But what, you know, I was looking at some of the numbers for, you know, the competitive vehicles in this set. So you got like the Volvo V60, you've got the Audi Allroad, you've got the BMW Sport Wagon.
The Allroad. Oh no, the Audi Allroad.
Allroad, and the Subaru Outback. The Outback's the only one that really has any numbers to it. And so I'm sort of curious, you know, the last time we saw a domestic wagon, I think, was the Dodge Magnum, and which was beloved by journalists everywhere, you know, and
didn't sell very well.
Didn't sell very well.
Well, the automotive press does love wagons. I found.
It's just
through my adventures the last couple months.
But wagons, manual transmissions, and diesel engines. I mean, that's the trifecta.
It has to be black too. But,
well, having a house full of millennials and a lot of millennial friends running around, they all think like you guys do. They like the manual transmissions. They like these type of vehicles, wagons and whatnot. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, we saw an opportunity there too, because what's kind of happened is if you look at, you know, the volume is the Subaru, but that starts at a very low price point, and it doesn't have the level of content maybe of a TourX, powertrain-wise either.
Talk a bit about that, because we haven't explained to the audience. What is the powertrain, and what would a typical monthly payment be on a car like this?
Well, monthly payment, that's hard to say. I mean, you're going to make your best deal. A lot of people will just buy them and finance them. Some will lease them.
Okay, what's the base MSRP on?
So the base MSRP is $29,995.
Okay, 30 grand.
So 30 grand, but the sweet spot in the volume we're seeing is when you move up into our Essence model, which is leather, and then that brings with it a lot of the premium content.
And you're talking about 36 grand or something like that?
36 grand, yeah. And then generally there's a driver confidence one package, which gets you kind of the safety equipment people want, and so that adds about another $1,500. So that's generally kind of where you are, under 38.
Okay.
For a very well contented, you know.
Okay, and the powertrain is what? So
this was something that we really looked at closely. So it's a 2-liter turbo, 250 horsepower engine. So it's a great powertrain for this vehicle. It's on our newer generation of Epsilon. So we did a lot of the same lightweighting we did on the Cross. It's a stiffer architecture. It's lighter. It handles
front-wheel drive layout?
Well, so on this one, all-wheel drive is standard, and that's the other thing. So because this is more of an adventure-oriented vehicle, and our all-wheel drive system now is the active twin clutch, which you've probably heard about, but you've got the twin clutches in the back, so you theoretically, in theory, this doesn't happen in the real world, you can move all the torque to one of the wheels. But it's constantly moving torque. So you don't only get the benefit of all-wheel drive when it's slippery, raining, snow, that type of thing. you get it in everyday driving. In fact, you may get more benefit on dry pavement because it helps in the handling of the car, because it's, although it doesn't have the torque vectoring accelerators on the wheels, it does a lot of the similar things because you can move the torque. You're not just braking; you've got a clutch on there. So, but yeah, so standard. So it's a fantastic powertrain, and you have these kind of longitudinal rails are standard. So the cross rails that we offer, you can order them when you order the car or in accessories at the dealership. We heard numerous customers tell us that, you know, if you don't offer the ability to put a roof-type system, a cargo carrying system on the vehicle, you're off my shopping list. That's how important it is. So the car is really set up well for the people that love this type of vehicle.
So what about the stuff capability in terms of the interior? It's two-row vehicle?
It's a two-row vehicle, but when you put the second row down, and in the leather version, you get a 40-20-40. So you can do a variety of things. So what that gives you is you can put two passengers in the back, and you can put down the middle, and you can have long
skis
things,
or something
skis or whatever you want back there. When you put them all down, though, you've got over 75 cubic feet of utility space, which is up there and very competitive with even the mid-sized crossovers. So it has a tremendous amount of space on the inside, and it has all the abilities you need on the roof to carry stuff. And that's what these buyers really are looking for, and that's why they gravitate to vehicles like this, because they get the car driving dynamics, but they get all the utility you find in an SUV.
See, that's one of the things that surprised me the most about when I went from the regular Regal Sportback to this one, was actually the handling of the vehicle. They said it was the car-like handling, and I was thinking, why do I want that? I was thinking more of a crossover like the Outback or something along those lines, where you can kind of, you know, it's a little bit more rugged, it's a little bit more of a feel for outdoor. And then we actually took this out on the back roads, I believe in Arizona, where, I mean, it's just gravel and dirt. The all-wheel drive system, for one, is interesting because, I mean, it puts the torque where you need it, but the quiet tuning for Buick is really good. And with the Regal Sportback or this one, it's very quiet and it handles extremely nice. It literally does handle like the Sportback, a sedan, when you're looking at the crossover. And when you're going down those roads and you're hitting the bumps, I mean, you don't feel them as much as a Sport or a Outback or another competitor, which has this wagon type feel.
Geez, there you go, Doug. What an endorsement.
But but that's what it does. And having the all-wheel drive all the time makes that vehicle feel very nimble. It does feel very sedan-like when you drive it.
Is it raised compared to the Sportback?
Slightly, yeah, 15 mils. So there's some added ground clearance, but it's not an off-roader. But you're very comfortable, like going back on the washboard, you know, gravelly roads, any campsite, any, you know, place you drop your kayaks, you know, in a creek or something. So.
Yeah, in fact, we got a question in from Kurt Wiley. He says, why'd you go with such a low ride height? He says he's read a number of reviews where it says it bottoms out on rough roads.
Well, I haven't read the reviews. I guess it would bottom out where most cars might. I mean, it's not a Hummer, but it's designed to kind of fit the lifestyle of people that, you know, if people really want to off-road in the traditional sense, they're looking.
This is not. Yeah, no. This is not an off-roading vehicle. I was just saying, on the bumpy roads and everything, it does handle extremely well. And yeah, you definitely don't probably want to take it anywhere you would take a Wrangler or even, like you said, the Outback. It's a little bit tougher of a handling for an Outback and a little bit higher up compared to this, which is more of that refined luxury that Buick's been talking about for years now.
Yeah. Don Bishop wrote in to ask, what's the towing capacity?
1,000 pounds.
Okay, great. And we got a bunch of other comments and questions. Vincent wrote in to say, great looking wagon. It should, but probably won't do well in the marketplace. I guess that's a matter of comparison, right? I mean, you guys aren't looking to sell gobs of these things. You're looking for a new niche in the marketplace.
Yeah, well, we'll sell as many as we can. Yeah. You know, we don't get involved. But if, in general, if you look at the wagon wagons as a segment. It's roughly the size of a large car, if you will, so around 300,000. But it did show about 7% growth, 16 to 17. So in the world of cars where there's a lot of pressure, downward pressure, it's very stable and somewhat growing. But as I mentioned earlier, there is a very loyal audience to these vehicles. And so for us, as part of an overarching family of Regals going into this segment, it's a great offshoot of that lineup to have it. And it will drive the volume it drives. It's up to us to make that viable. But in general, other than the Outback that we talked about earlier, everybody does kind of fall in this, a lower range of volume, I'd say, from 6 to 10,000 or something.
You made a good point that, boy, the whole market's going to crossovers, and I think we're going to hit a saturation point where everybody someday is going to go, I'm sick of the look of a crossover. Everyone's got the same thing. Are you kind of exploring what the market may do in the future with a car like this?
Yeah, I've had some discussion with some of the media recently about, you seem to avoid Wagon and that type of thing, and it's because the whole thing's become blurred, really. Why isn't that a crossover, right? Because in the sense of what a crossover is, it offers different benefits that you traditionally would use.
Yeah, but if you stopped anybody on the street and said, is that a crossover or a wagon, 99.9% would say it's a wagon.
Right, I agree. But what it comes down to is, for us, this is an exploration of getting more volume in the mid-car market. So this has been an area where I think there used to be a lot more wagons sold. Depending on your age, you remember, but they seem to all be on the big B-bodies or LTD wagons with wood.
I do. I don't know about Mike. We remember that Roadmaster.
But now,
Brady Bunch.
And now you have very sporty variants. I mean, all of them are very unique, and people really gravitate to them. So I think they are, in essence, a good opportunity for us.
So who's the buyer of this versus the buyer of an Enclave, your full-size SUV?
What we find is the age distribution is kind of bimodal on vehicles like this. So a way to look at it is this is a before and after an Enclave. So a lot of young people buy these because they want to be active. They don't like to sit up high. They like everyday driving characteristics we've talked about. So you may have people that have their dog, and there were a lot of people we talked to that had dogs. Then you move into your life stage where you have to haul your family and a lot more stuff and all the stuff that goes with babies and that type of thing. And then as you start to move out of that, and we saw this in minivans too, that were kind of bimodal, and you become an empty nester, now you want something more for you. You still are very active. There's things you like to do, but you don't need that expansive room anymore. And so this becomes kind of a logical choice. And so you do find buyers today in this segment are the age distribution is very bimodal.
To get back to the true crossover, because I was waiting for Doug to say that, because I knew he was going to, and I was surprised he actually said wagon. I spent a lot of time talking to Doug, Phil Brook, their VP of Marketing, as well as Duncan Aldred, the head of the brand, about why they aren't calling it a wagon, and why they're calling it a true crossover, and why they call their crossovers SUVs. But I've been numerous conversations with this, and the best explanation that I got was when you say wagon, there is a preconceived notion, a preconceived stereotype about that vehicle, and people might not even think about it. But when they say TourX, Regal, you kind of think about it, well, what's that? They look at it at least.
Yeah, but as Gary said.
Oh yeah, anyone who actually
generation might have a stigma about wagons, although I do not.
Yeah.
But do millennials who have basically rarely see wagons think the same way? Is there a stigma for them?
I mean, I'm toward the latter part of the millennial generation, and I mean, I think of wagon, still think of the Brady Bunch wood paneling, and I wrote about this actually with Automotive News. And a lot of people, my wife, who doesn't know cars at all, I told her that I'm gonna go drive this TourX. She goes, what is it? I go, it's a wagon. She goes, why? And I go, see, there's this notion about the wagon, and as soon as you say wagon, it could turn some people off. And if you don't say wagon, they'll at least look at it. And I mean, then they will make a judgment about what it looks like.
Car companies do this all the time. BMW will not call an SUV an SUV. It calls it an SAV, sports activity vehicle. I think it's a bunch of BS. The public sees right through this stuff. They're going to see that this is a wagon.
The other guys don't call them wagons either, though. when you think about it, you've got the all-road and different things like that, and it's just...
The car companies do not.
Yes.
Everybody in them calls them a wagon.
Oh, no, I called them wagons throughout all the articles I wrote on them. But it was just an interesting play, and the whole crossover versus SUV calling it, I mean...
See, but I just wonder, okay, if we think about it, you know, Doug, you're mentioning the sport version is a hatchback, and you know, and that used to have a stigma to it, right? I mean,
what do you think back to, like a Gremlin or?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and nobody thinks about that anymore. I mean, it's just gone. And so you're able to say, hey, you know, we've got this car with lots of space in the back, and people go, wow, that's great, it's fantastic. And then you have this vehicle, and it's just like, you know, what is it? It's a large, capacious vehicle that you can put your stuff in.
I would have liked to have seen maybe a V6 that the GS has in the TourX, just to test around a little bit, a GS version.
But a manual?
Here, we're making things complicated. I got a question, just sitting here looking at the vehicle, and I love having them in the studio. If you look at the wheel well arches, and maybe this is a question for the designers, but I'll ask you anyway since you're sitting here. If you look at the top of the wheel wells, there's a little bump up. It's not a perfect arch. There's a little bump up at the top of each wheel well. Why did they do that?
And I think you hit it up front. It's just a design cue of the vehicle. There was no specific reason in terms of how that cladding is on there or anything that necessitated that.
I'm just curious. I'd love to ask the designers, what was the thinking that said, nah, we don't want just a perfect arch. We want this thing to bump up a little bit.
How do you define success? How will you know if this is a successful vehicle for Buick?
Well, the sales volume will tell us if it's successful. I would say that leading into, because they're just now starting to arrive at dealerships, there's under 2,000, I think, nationally at this point, but they're coming every day. But success up to this point, since we introduced it at the New York Auto Show, we got incredible reactions from the automotive press at that point in time. And then once it was exposed in the public domain, we could start showing it at consumer events. And any place we go, people gravitate to it. It's just a beautifully styled vehicle in this segment, and people are just drawn to it. And they come and look at it without preconceived notions as to what it is. To them, that's an ultimate crossover. That's not a wagon. So, so far, the reaction, even in our earlier focus groups, we do a lot of that leading into it for messaging reasons and everything else. When they saw pictures of it, people were just really surprised. When they saw all three of the variants, the family of Regals lined up, they said, wow, that makes such a huge perception change for Buick overall. When I look at all three of those together, it's like, wow, that's really...
You're changing the nature of Buick. I mean, so Buick isn't like the final ride anymore. It's like... I mean, I mean, let's face it. That's for many years. I mean, before you were probably involved in this. I mean, that's what it was about. And now there's just like a lot of opportunity in terms of people to come in and look to see what you guys have, whether it's the Encore or something as large as this.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about that? Because that is a very lagging perception that I think over the, say, the last 5 years, we've really driven some brand momentum where you don't see that as much, but it's very age-based, people that have that perception. But any of the Buicks I have in my driveway at home and the millennial, my kids and their friends and even neighbors, approach the car without a preconceived thought as to what you just articulated there. I don't even want to repeat it. So, but they say, but great car, beautiful car. And when I brought the TourX home for the first time, my son put it up on Snapchat or Instagram, one of those. I don't get into those two. But anyway, all kinds of high school kids were saying, wow, that is the best Buick yet. I mean, they were all over that vehicle. So it just tells me that it's a combination of things. One, our portfolio is so fresh. I mean, if you look at it, you never have that perception.
And crossover heavy. Crossover heavy, I mean.
Yeah, kind of going with the market, going where the growth is at this point. And then, but just the vehicles, like the oldest one right now is the Cascada that was a little over 2 years ago. That's the oldest vehicle in our lineup. So I think the perception of the vehicle, it really depends on who you talk to. There are some that hold on to that and will still express that because they don't understand or they haven't educated themselves on where the brand is today. You go to certain markets in the country, and I won't mention where they are, but you have people that talk with great authority as to what a Buick, and you know they have not been in a showroom in 20 years, and they just have a remembrance of what they talked about back in the early 80s or something. So I don't know. It's a very interesting phenomenon. But if you measure like brand momentum and a lot of the things we do, it is moving very quickly in the right direction. And to change a brand overall, you've got to do it first and foremost with the product, which I think we've done. So. And then we keep looking at ways to bring out white space vehicles that do change people's mind, make them think, wow, that's a Buick. And people say that, even though it was our commercial, people say that in focus groups because it really surprises them.
People said it on the drive too.
Yeah.
It was surprising.
We're getting down to,
yeah, okay.
We're getting down to the very end of the segment. I wanted to go through some of the comments and everything that have come in during the course of this conversation. Rocket Boy says, it would be great, but there's no manual. So he doesn't want one because of that.
Like I said.
Right. Colder Beer says, very lovely in person, very impressive. What else do we have here? Chuck Grenchy said, great looking wagon. If I were in the market, this one would be on my short list. What's this? Boy, I can't even read that. MKL Colvin, it looks like. Buick should stay with the wagon market. They can definitely compete with Volvo. Frost says, very refined. So yeah, look, and there's others that have written in. We just don't have time to get to it all, but.
Can I just touch on one thing real quick? So I put it on my list. So you started to touch a little bit on the competition. One of the things I did want to mention was that where this is positioned, a number of manufacturers have left the marketplace because we would talk to owners of, say, the TSX wagon, some of the Saab wagons. They've held out of market much longer than they ever intended because there was nothing kind of in their price range. So we call them, say, orphan owners, only because they can't sort of replace, even in the same price parameters, what they have today. So there's another opportunity right there. They're loyal, and they need something like this. So they're kind of waiting.
So the other wagons tend to be more expensive. I mean, if you're going to buy something from Audi, you're going to buy BMW or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, but $10,000 or $12,000 up price is not within their means.
And this vehicle has a European pedigree as well. So
looks beautiful.
There you go. Hey, I'm afraid with this we're going to have to wrap it up. But Doug Osterhoff, thanks so much for coming on the show. Very interesting. I think you guys are really onto something here.
Thank you.
Congratulations on having a gutsy move here.
Thanks.
With that, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back right after that. But first, a shout out to our friends at Lear.
Lear Connexus offers a parental controls application with geofencing that sends notifications regarding driving behavior and location, including curfew alerts, acceleration alerts, and speed alerts. All delivered to a smartphone application that includes vehicle location, driver notifications, and a report card of driving history, including notifications when predefined geographic boundaries are crossed. For more information, visit Lear.com.
Okay, we're back. We're going to talk about all kinds of things, automotive industry-wise, but you like this wagon, Mike.
I do like the wagon, and you know, I've always been a fan of wagons. I had a 2010 Pontiac Vibe, which is a wagon, but also a little bit of a hatchback, and I just like the utility of it, and the looks of this one are pretty good.
Looks really good. Yeah, no, I agree with you.
And the all-wheel drive system, but yeah, it is a little bit low ride height, and I would like to see a manual because I'm an auto journalist, I guess.
Yeah.
Then we'll get that and then put the diesel in, and then you'll be all set.
Yeah, the V6, like I said, I would even like the V6 even a little bit more than the diesel in a wagon like this.
Right.
But
what do you guys think is going to happen? As you mentioned, Gary, this is made by Opel. Opel's no longer part of GM. Yeah. In fact, I think all the Opel products end around 2020. Are they going to stay committed to tooling up their own version?
Or find something else.
I mean, they're going to, I didn't think Opel ended in 2020 around there because I thought they had the life cycle of each of the vehicles that they went through.
So it lasts a little bit?
It lasts a little bit longer. But, I mean, they expected this vehicle, they raised it from, I believe, about 30% of the Regal sales to half or so. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch, is the kind of mix of the vehicles for the Regal. Because like I said, they've been at 2% or less market share in the mid-size segment, so they're really not gambling with too much.
Right.
And they've got the Encore, they've got the Enclave, and they've got 60, or maybe up to 80% of their lineup now crossover sales. So why not try this?
Yeah.
Why not?
No, I agree. I like it. I like the move. Okay, do we have a Dr. Data number?
Oh, yeah, we have a number.
Boy. Oh, boy, oh, boy. Okay.
Am I going to be the only one guessing?
No,
There's
I'm
usually
gonna
two
guess.
people guessing. Okay.
No, there's two people.
Yeah.
All right, so this one is it's a little thematic. I've made this one that
Okay.
So and you'll probably get it right away, and there's nothing that's going to give it away for you to look very carefully at the background. So Carmen, please bring up the first set of numbers here. Okay, so it's 876 out of 1,000 and 850 out of 1,000. Okay, so I gave you a clue. It's thematic.
Okay. Do you have a guess there, Mike?
He always says he thinks I can get it. I appreciate that, but
I just think that, young, bright guy like you just nail it.
I'm going to take a guess then.
Go ahead, Joe.
Buick's done really well in customer satisfaction scores, that sort of thing. So I wonder if the top one is, 876 out of 1,000 is the best of the best, and Buick's at 850 out of 1,000. I don't know. I have to guess, and that's my guess.
So the JD Power,
Something like that, yeah.
I'll take that, or I'll also say the amount of crossovers they're selling compared to cars. On a scaled basis.
It's only partially thematic. It's not completely thematic. So.
All right. I think John's got the better guess, yeah.
All right, Carmen, the answer is, so we have the, as you said, John, customer satisfaction study. And so this just came out March 15th. So Infiniti came with the 876 and Buick 850. And so both of those are the #1 in respective. So the premium brand with the Infiniti, and but there was another interesting thing. So Carmen, please bring up the third one, which I think needs. So it's the first time Infiniti's gotten this since 2003. Buick, as you said, John, that they're really on a roll here in terms of customer satisfaction.
Right.
2 years in a row that they're #1 in the mass market segment for that JD Power study. So congratulations to them.
Yeah, no kidding.
They take care of the people.
To my defense, I think I was traveling during the study when it was released.
Oh,
Somebody else
please.
took it. But no, I mean, they've done a great job with customer satisfaction, and I think some of the other GM brands have a lot to learn from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they do. No doubt about it.
And so why do you think that is? I mean, you cover GM and for Automotive News and spend a lot of time talking to all of the different brands.
Well, I mean, I think some of it is actually the dealership experience and what you get at the dealer. As John alluded to, I actually just purchased a certified pre-owned 2014 Volt. And I told my editor I was doing this, a few other reporters are doing it, so we kind of each submitted an article about our experience. And I wanted to do as much online as possible, and I kind of did, but then when I got to the dealership, it didn't matter. Because I just went through the same exact process, it seemed like, as I would have if I didn't do anything online. And I spent a lot of time researching, and the experience that I was expecting to get wasn't what I actually got when I got to the dealership.
Isn't that amazing? And I mean, this has been true for a long time. The worst part about buying a new car is buying the new car. People hate it. It takes so long. I know for years, the #1 complaint at Lexus, talking about a brand that's got this great reputation for reliability and everything, #1 complaint at Lexus, it takes too long to buy a car. If you just walk in and want to buy a car, it's a 4-hour experience. It's crazy.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, Cox Automotive, Michelle Krebs, who's been on the show many times, works for that company. They just came out with their annual car buyer journey study. Just came out, and I was looking at the numbers of that, and only half the people are satisfied with how long it takes them to buy a car.
I'm surprised it's that much.
Well, I was a little bit too. But what was also interesting is that 42% of the time that's spent is on third-party sites looking for information, which is I'm sure you did. And then it's 18% is a dealership site looking at what they have, and OEM is 20%. So 64% found that the financing paperwork took longer than they thought it would, and 40% said the negotiation took longer than expected. Well, so if half the people though are dissatisfied, I mean, that's crazy.
Well, and even if the customer satisfaction index, I mean, isn't directly related to the dealership experience, it kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth once you leave the dealership in your vehicle. And if something little goes wrong, you kind of think, okay, well, this is why this took so long, this is why they didn't do this, or this is why they threw in this package, or wanted me to take this warranty. And I just think overall, the entire dealership experience, and some brands are trying to remold it, some dealers are trying to remold it, but when you have the separation of the franchise dealers and the automakers are trying to kind of control the dealers more, you get a different experience anywhere you go. There's no way you can have a standard experience across the board when you have this type of model.
You know, another thing that was sort of striking to me is only 67% thought that the dealer gave them the best possible deal. So you got 33% of the people are basically saying, you know what, I probably got screwed.
Well, and from the article I wrote that John alluded to, I had dealers actually contacting me, asking, was this one of my dealers? And I said, I would tell them the truth. The dealer who I went to didn't contact me yet, and told them no. And they go, if it was, I would really want to know, and because we want to change this. We're trying to have a standard process where you can come in, it's quicker, it's better, you feel more relaxed, and you're happy when you leave, and you're not second guessing what you just did.
Right.
Well, like I said, this is not a new problem. Most people do not like the car buying experience. They love having the car, but you know, geez, what an issue for the industry to try to turn around. And it's amazing, you know, here you tried to do everything online, and that's the way that the industry is trying to reduce the time that you spend at the dealership. But all they're doing is offloading more work on you to do at home on your laptop.
But I mean, some people enjoy that. Look at Amazon. I mean, people just buy and buy and buy. And I actually really was looking into Carvana.
I know, but if I go to Amazon, I see something, click bought, and they drop it off at the doorstep in a couple of days. That is not the experience in buying a car.
No, it's not. And I actually tried to get it delivered, and that did not work out too well for me. I won't go into the details, but yeah, that did not work out too well for me. And that's one
Even though they said they would deliver the car.
There was an option. There was an option through the online website to have a car delivery. And then when I got to the dealership, I was told by 3 people that they actually didn't do that, or they thought they didn't do that. And then a sales manager told me that their delivery guys were in Florida for 3 weeks on vacation.
All right, so you had this on, you were looking at the dealer website. So this is.
Oh, I was looking, I mean.
No, but I mean for this promise of a delivery.
This was through GM's Shop Click Drive program that they launched, I think it was about 2000.
So it's more like shop, click, wait, drive.
Fail in my experience.
All right, so this week Ford announced Ready.Shop.Go, which is their online variation of this, and they're saying there's pricing transparency, set dealer pricing, including taxes and fees, finance and lease options, consumer promise honoring quoted deal for 48 hours, pricing comparison, review actual prices with Kelley Blue Book Price Advisor, and trade-in values, options for scheduling test drives, online credit application through Ford Credit. Does this sound like what you saw with the GM site?
It does, however, I'm not sure Ford's is new and certified pre-owned. It might just be new, because I did the same thing actually on the new side when I bought a new car about 9 months ago, and it was a smoother process. It wasn't exactly what I had intended it to, and the price was a little different, but not much. This time around, it was off by hundreds of dollars because of a dealer upcharge for a bigger profit after the initial price tag. But we'll see how Ford does, because I mean, a lot of people are going into the space and wanting to do more online. Like I said, Carvana is just literally, you click on it, they deliver it to your house, do the finance and everything, I believe, online. And I wanted to do that, and when it came down to it, Carvana was a little bit more expensive, and I am not ready to pull the trigger yet on a vehicle that I have not seen at all or been able to actually get into. But we'll see how this area develops. I mean, we've talked about Tesla on the show before and the direct sales model. I think there's going to be an interesting forefront coming in 5, 10, 15 years. I mean, how we're going to see the actual retail space develop and how much we're going to be able to deliver vehicles online or actually do the entire process online and then having it dropped off.
So, John, you're going to the National Auto Dealers Association meeting tomorrow. What do you think the vibe is going to be there?
Well, you know, this is great ammunition for me to get prepared for all the interviews I'm going to do. I think I will give dealers a little bit of cover here because they are very heavily regulated, especially when it comes to finance. I mean, it's almost as if they're more regulated than the banks. And so I understand a lot of the time, especially when it comes to financing your car at the dealership, they've just got a ton of paperwork that never existed in the past. So I give them a little bit of a shout out from that respect. But having said that, it's been true ever since I got into the business. I've learned that buying a car is the most distasteful part of owning one, the actual buying process. Most people hate it.
Well, and let me tell you, the personnel who I dealt with most of the time, they were very kind, they were nice, courteous, but it was just certain things that they didn't know about or certain things that the automaker side of things from the website.
Who cares if they're nice? Well, they don't even know their job.
There's difference there, yeah, but I mean, it was just an interesting process because I was trying to do as much online as possible and it ended up just not working out.
And I shouldn't be too harsh of saying they don't know their job. That comes down to dealer training.
Yeah.
And that is another big issue that dealers are grappling with. Number one, hiring the right people. They, like everybody else, you know, have a hard time trying to assess who are the right people to hire. And then in a lot of cases, not all, there's some terrific dealers out there, but in a lot of cases, they don't provide any training. These people really, and like you're running into.
Some of the problem is there's almost too much training and too much changing because, I mean, we haven't even talked about EVs. I mean, all the automakers are jumping on the EV bandwagon. 2020, entire lineup. 2022, entire lineup. We're going to have no combustion engines. Where are people going to go to actually get these and learn about them? Because right now, I don't feel any automaker is in the right place to actually train their sales staff and have them sell EVs and educate the customer on every step of this process.
Yeah.
Well, I got to say, I bought a Saturn many years ago when Saturn still existed, and that was the best buying experience I'd ever had.
So why don't they replicate that?
Well, and you know, and then talking about training. I mean, and I don't know if all Saturn dealers did this, but Saturn to Plymouth, I mean, they had evening seminars that you would come in and they would teach you how to change your oil. They would teach you how to do this. They teach you how to do that, and they made it very pleasant. I mean, and so you know, it was like...
And you nailed it, Gary, because the cars were okay. The cars were no great shakes, right? It was the buying experience and the ownership experience that made Saturn what it was. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that costs so little money.
Right.
That is nothing like trying to tool up a car. And why I'm at a loss for words to say, why hasn't everybody just learned from Saturn and said, hey, that worked brilliantly?
So if you had Saturn and you had electric Saturns, they would have a seminar. You'd go in and you'd learn about it. They probably would have seminars for people who lived in the neighborhood who weren't even going to buy a car to come in and learn about it. I mean, it's just... And I mean, so it's not an insurmountable problem. It's something that is very simple. I mean, easy for me to say because I don't do that.
Well, it's a complex. I mean, it is the process is complex, John. Like I said, they are regulated, and there's training, and every customer wants something different, and they're coming in actually against the 8 ball or behind the 8 ball already because customers necessarily don't trust dealers. And despite how some people, I know a lot of them have no haggle pricing, and I've heard that's. I actually talked to a dealer yesterday who has that, and she said, you know what, people have loved it. Their Google ratings are great. Their overall ratings are just through the roof because people don't feel pressured, and they're not on a retention for selling vehicles. They're just hourly, and then, you know, they might get a little bonus if they sell a car. It's not as much of, we need to sell this car so I can make my money.
Take the pressure out.
Yeah.
Hey, look, we got to wrap this up right now. We got other things to talk about. One quick question from the audience before we go for another quick commercial break. Alexander Karabitsis wants to know, are Chevy and Jeep going to show anything in New York next week? He said he checked the schedule and he didn't see anything. I don't think they have anything.
No, and Jeep just
Jeep
did Wrangler. So.
Jeep just did Wrangler, and then they also did the refreshed Cherokee.
Cherokee, sorry.
And then they did, I mean, the Compass was even before that in LA. But yeah, I don't believe Chevy's doing anything unless they come out with a huge surprise, but no on Jeep, no on Chevy to the...
Okay, there you go, Alexander. They're not going to be there. And now we got to give a quick shout out to our friends at Bridgestone.
Woo, let's do this! The U.S. bobsled team is helping Bridgestone demonstrate how our tires come through in their clutch.
Hang on, left!
Bridgestone's Dueler Lenza Plus tires give you all-season performance for up to 80,000 miles.
Right!
They're engineered to handle wet roads.
Left! Right!
And winter conditions. Just like the pros, right?
Tim, less talking, more leaning.
Right. Oops, did it again.
Okay, we're back talking about all things automotive, and so far the biggest news story this week has been that Uber car that struck and killed a pedestrian out in Tempe, Arizona. What do you guys make of this, Gary? What do you...
Well, first of all, I think, anybody dying as a result of a car accident, it's
not good.
Not good. It's so feel poorly about that. But I looked, and according to NHTSA, there were 10,497 deaths in 2016 from alcohol-related vehicle accidents. That's one every 50 minutes. That means that there's one happening during this show. Somebody's going to die as a result of a drunk driver.
And that's just drunk drivers.
That's
if you
just
stand
drunk
back
driver.
and look at it, 100 people are going to get killed today in cars,
right?
Just in the U.S.
But let's just take the drunk driving thing for a minute, because basically, let's face it, a robot driving your car is never going to be drunk. Okay, so that is going to take deaths out of this equation. I mean, and at the Detroit show, I ran into John Krafchick, who runs Waymo, and I was thinking, we talk about the automated vehicles on the show a lot, and I said to him, John, I said, aren't you answering a question nobody's really asked? I mean, who's basically, clamoring for automated vehicles? And he gave me what could be best described as a death stare, saying, don't you realize how many people die every year in automobile accidents? Isn't it incumbent upon us to do things to change that, to make it safer for people? And I mean, it's just like, geez, I'm sorry, John. It's just like, and I think that's what it comes down to.
He's right. Yeah. He's absolutely right. Look, 100 people killed every single day. 6,000 injured badly enough to go to the hospital every single day. What are we waiting for?
Right.
Well, I mean, we're seeing some of the benefits now with the emergency braking, even blind spot monitoring. A simple light can stop you from slamming into somebody over there in the meantime. But the whole zero fatality future, I mean, I've always kind of questioned it a little bit, because I feel there are some accidents that are unavoidable.
Right.
And while they can significantly cut down, I think we've got to learn more about the Uber accident, particularly for me to comment on that exactly. But they're going to significantly cut down on fatalities. And we were kind of, I don't want to say I was waiting for this to happen, but I was
we all knew it was going to happen.
Something like this to happen.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that it did happen, but I mean, the industry has to learn from it, and I'm sure all the automakers are triple checking their systems to see how this accident happened and to make sure theirs is kind of as much foolproof as possible to not happen.
It's sort of bizarre. So we had Trevor Paul from Planet M on the show last month, and
the emperor of Planet M, as I tell them.
Yes,
I like Trevor. I like Trevor.
So they're basically, promoting Michigan as a place to test automated vehicles because we have the Four Seasons, and there are a lot of people who are very skeptical that companies like Uber and Waymo are using Arizona to test vehicles, because Arizona basically has one season hot, right? And I was looking, and according to the Governor's Highway Safety Administration, this is governors of states, so they compilated some facts, that Arizona had the highest rate of pedestrian deaths per resident population, 1.61 deaths per 100,000 people. So the number one in the country is Arizona. Who'd have thought that? So again, very unfortunate that this woman was hit by this vehicle, but what is it about Arizona that there are so many pedestrians that are dying in accidents? Hawaii, by the way, had the lowest number at 0.07 deaths per 100,000 people.
Very interesting. I wouldn't have expected that.
No, I would not have expected that particularly for Arizona. I mean, people are they're all testing, saying that that's compared to San Francisco, where GM is testing. They're also testing in Arizona. They prefer San Fran because of the complex environment compared to Arizona, where they believe it's simple.
Right.
Yeah, I like GM's approach.
Well, simpler, let's say that.
If you can figure it out in the toughest driving environment you can find, everything else should be a whole lot easier. What I was it really irked me about how many anti-autonomous technology people came out on social media without knowing the facts whatsoever, going, this should be banned, this is not ready, you know, we should not go this way whatsoever. Now we know that the pedestrian stepped right in front of the car last minute. The police chief of Tempe, Arizona said this accident was unavoidable. There was a safety driver in the car behind the steering wheel who said it happened so fast there was no time to react. That's what really got my goat going, was that all these people attacked the technology, and sure doesn't look like the technology was at fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's social media. I mean, you're going to have people out cry about everything anytime. But yeah, I mean, like I said, even if you had the personal driver there, you had this technology that probably sensed the person, but the person was standing still, and then they just hopped out. So, I mean, unfortunate accident, but I don't think it's necessarily going to do anything to slow or kill the autonomous kind of momentum that we're seeing going on from the automakers.
Mm-hmm.
What else is on your list there, Gary?
Well, you know, I thought an interesting thing that we didn't talk about it, that Lyft, the ride-hailing company, and Magna, the
automotive supplier,
which builds cars for companies, Mercedes, soon to be the BMW Toyota sports car. They got together, and apparently Magna is going to start building autonomous vehicles for Lyft.
Is it vehicles, or is it just the autonomous technology?
I got the sense it was vehicles. What about you? Did you?
I am not sure on that. I know that obviously with the suppliers like Delphi and Magna have been working on autonomous vehicle technologies a lot more, and a lot of people, including Sergio Marchionne, CEO of FCA, has said that's where he thought that the technologies were actually going to come from.
So basically, you'd go to Magna and buy a package and put it on your vehicle?
Yeah, that was my understanding of it, more so than the actual vehicles. I'm not 100% sure of the Magna connection, though.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, ride-sharing fleets are kind of where everyone expects these vehicles to launch in, because you can pretty much take the cost out of operating them.
Right.
And the cost is the driver. And if you do EVs, even more so, you charge them up at night and have them go out. No gas stations, no filling.
You know, and I thought another interesting thing that Lyft did, I mean, to stay with the Lyft thing for a minute, is that they're beginning a subscription model, a monthly subscription model for people that, and they're testing this out. And so basically, it's going to be making it, you know, comparatively inexpensive for someone to forego buying a car, and just being able to have this on a regular basis. And they've also done this thing where you can schedule your drive a week in advance. So if you know you're going to be going somewhere, and you know, you can have it within a 10-minute pickup window a week in advance. And so I begin to wonder, is a company like this going to be the company that really sort of disrupts what we can think of, whether it, you know, the dealers we've been talking about, or buying a new car like this TourX that's here, or, I mean, does it change everything?
I believe that Uber and Lyft in the U.S. are way out in front when it comes to providing mobility services from a branding standpoint. So I find it fascinating that Magna's getting into this too. We could talk about that in just a moment. But yeah, if it's all about, I need somebody to provide me a ride, who gets to brand that to me, where I go, yeah, I hate Uber and I love Lyft, or vice versa, or whatever it is. Whoever gets out there first and really captures the high ground is going to have a massive advantage. You know, maybe the daily rentals, the Hertz, Avises, and Enterprises have a role to play in that. The automakers, man, they got a lot of catch up. Now, GM has launched the Maven ride sharing, and they're expanding that. Ford's got this inky-dinky little service called Chariot. Other automakers like Daimler and the rest have got their ride-sharing services going, but you bet they've lost a lot of ground to Uber and Lyft already. And that's just in the US. You know, in China, Didi dominates the market. In India, it's Ola. In Europe, there's several others like GetCar and BlaBlaCar. So I think the auto industry is losing out fast in this space.
So how's Maven doing since you covered GM?
I mean, let's start off with that the Uber and Lyfts and all these startups, they're not necessarily worried about profits when they're doing all this right now. And GM has to be a little bit more cautious with how they're spending their money. And I mean, they are investing billions in mobility, in autonomous, and they also, like John mentioned, believe first to market, particularly with the autonomous vehicles, are going to be a huge advantage compared to kind of waiting it out and seeing how it plays out. And Maven...
You just say that General Motors will be first to market with an autonomous...
Oh, no. I said that they are hoping and they see it as a huge advantage to being to market first.
Okay.
But Maven, I mean, it's kind of a testing ground for their mobility efforts right now. And they've got there's been talks of peer-to-peer where someone could actually rent out their own vehicle that they own to someone else, kind of like a subscription model. They've been talks of subscription models for them, and that's not just like the Zipcar kind of service that they're doing today. So it should be interesting, though, to see what happens with Cruise Automation, which is their AV arm, and Maven, which is kind of this mobility kind of test ground that they have right now.
Next year,
and
right?
Where those really intersect, I think that's going to be kind of an enlightening point to watch.
It could be the first mover advantage for General Motors because they are going to, it looks like, they are going to be the first automaker offering autonomous ride hailing. And that's going to give them, I think, first mover advantage. Waymo is already doing it.
I was going to say, I would say first mass production of it, because Waymo is already doing it, yeah.
But Waymo has to buy Pacificas from FCA to be able to do it. GM is able to run these things right down the line on its own, assembly line. So I think GM could have a huge advantage on this. But again, it all comes down to now's the time to get into the market. Like you say, Mike, now don't wait a few years.
Okay, but think about this for a minute. So
the market's not here yet, like.
Well, okay, but okay, what was the reason why CraftCheck said Waymo went with FCA? Because
they don't want to build cars.
Well, even more fundamental than that, the Pacifica has powered sliding doors. So when the automated vehicle comes up to your house, the door opens and you walk right in. Mm-hmm. So Chevy Bolts don't have that.
They do now. The fourth gen, I believe, of the Cruise AV vehicle without the steering wheel.
Has sliding doors?
It does not have sliding doors.
It has automatic doors.
It has automatic doors that open and shut. And I actually got to sit in that vehicle. It's different. And Mike Martinez, my colleague, and I actually had a discussion about how long, if these vehicles are on the road, AVs, are they actually going to have those front and passenger seats, and not just turned around?
Right.
So you can talk to the people in the back, and it'll almost be more like a shuttle than an actual vehicle, because if you don't have manual controls, why do you need to actually sit in a seat that is built for that?
You don't, but as you know, GM is taking something that it's already got right now, the Bolt, and adapting that to it. This is not, and even though they did design the Bolt with a lot of these things in mind, i.e., how do you open and close the doors automatically? You got to leave room for electric motors and the like to be able to do that. But we have not yet seen a total purpose-built ride-hailing autonomous vehicle. And we'll probably see that in the 2020, 2021 timeframe.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what Ford's working on, for example. Toyota has already shown some of its vision of what it's going to have at the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. So just wait. We're right around the corner from that happening.
And GM's second-gen EV platform, which I think is right around in that time frame as well. I think we're going to start seeing a lot of different models coming off that. And with their whole mission of the 20 new all EVs or fuel cell by 2023, I guarantee we're going to see a lot more of those.
Yeah. Hey, look, we got to wrap this show up, but we got a phone call. I always like to take the phone calls. They took the time to make it. So, Carmen, let's bring that in.
Hey, John, great show today. Talking about Buick, and longtime listener and watcher, 45-year-old Michigan citizen, moved out west, but still watch your show. Guys, what's your take on the Chrysler 300 and the Challenger? It's 2018. They're basically starting 2019 production. How long will these cars be in production? There was supposed to be a CUDA convertible or a CUDA car, but I don't think that's likely to happen with the Ford Revelation. Sometimes powers watch other car powers. Plus, Fiat doesn't really have the money. What will they use the plant for? Can they make a real full-size SUV, since SUVs are in vogue now, not the smaller one that they make that's quite successful? Do you think they'll both be gone by 2021? Let's have honesty here. I appreciate the candor. Great show, and take care. The best of Michigan. Bye-bye.
Thanks for the call. Really appreciate it. I can start on that, and you guys can jump in. There is an all-new Challenger, Charger coming in 2019. You know, you mentioned they're starting the 2019, but that's just a model year of the existing cars. FCA needs to fill that plant. They're built in Brampton, Ontario, in Canada. And this is one of the oldest platforms in the market right now. But based on the new car forecast reports that I've seen, there is an all-new one, all new platform, everything, coming, and I think it goes into production in late 2019.
Okay, because I was going to say, I thought that we were going to go through 2020 with the current model.
Okay, so it probably comes out as the
through calendar year 2020 or model year 2020?
I'm trying to remember the Unifor negotiations because they
Unifor being their union.
The union, like the UAW for Canadian. And I thought it took us to 2020 year, and that would be late 2019 production starting.
That's right.
Having it available.
Yeah,
That would make.
I'm talking November, December production.
And we'll actually learn all of this when Sergio Marchionne has his grand farewell swan song when he releases the company's new 5-year plan.
Right.
So
when will that happen?
I believe it's happening this
end of May.
Summer. Is it end of
either the very end of May or the very beginning of June, something like that.
So I mean, that's always a fun day, hearing his grand manifesto with him leaving the company, kind of pretty much after this plan is rolled out there. It should be interesting. But yeah, I mean, the 300, the Challenger, the Charger, those should have been dead in the water years ago. Yeah. Tim Kuniskis, who was the head of Dodge, and I mean, he juiced those for as much as he could do because of the Hellcat,
you know,
the Demon.
So old stuff like that. Boy,
and you know what Chrysler designed? Ralph Gilles, and that design of the 300, they keep refreshing it, and it looks good. And I guarantee every vehicle that's coming off the line, they're just making money. I mean, they paid for the retooling of those years ago. So if they can make money and throw in a 707 horsepower engine, why the hell not?
Right.
Real good. Look, we had other questions, and so we're just out of time. I'm sorry. Thank you for taking the time to send them in, and please keep doing so in the future. We will get to you at some point, but with that, we're going to have to wrap this up. So, Mike Wayland, thanks so much for coming on.
Always fun.
Really good. And Gary?
And the next time we'll be back at 3 o'clock, so don't be confused, people.
That's right. And, of course, have to thank all of you for having tuned in.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion, and by Lear, a global leader in automotive seating and electrical systems.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv. Right. Boy, what a week of news.
It keeps coming.
Yeah. Oh, you know what I got to do yesterday? Drive the EcoSport.
What'd you think?
Martinez has one of those right now.
He's in one?
Yeah.
They announced the 2019 Fusion, and they did it at this place in Royal Oak, Ferndale, and they had 3 EcoSports outside. They said, you can take one for a ride. I mean, I drove one for 15 minutes. I mean, no great shakes, and I think it looks, its appearance is very awkward.
It's hard to style those little vehicles.
Right.
They all look like they have hunched shoulders to them, Hunchback of Notre Dame kind of a styling line to them.
Well, Buick's done a good job with the Encore. I mean, they got in the market so quick, and the design's good.